Despite the franchise being named after the supposed villains, Evil Dead really lacks focus on them, doesn't it? Don't get me wrong, I love that this is one of the few quote-unquote horror franchises to focus on its heroes and have them be the face rather than the dressing. But I really do wish that its villains were as strong as its protagonists. For example, Deadite Henrietta and Evil Ash are very serviceable villains that both have positives and negatives, but the thing they lack is a sense of overall depth. They're both very simplistic with a goal of simply causing chaos, and the way they usually get there is with mindless brute strength. There's no tactics or planning besides "we're gonna hit you hard." Ruby was a step up in season 1 of Ash vs Evil Dead, but she more so lacked the screen time to make her an interesting villain. But in season 2, we got not only what I can safely say is the best villain of the entire series, but also one of the few to be genuinely memorable. Not for his silly one-liners, but rather because he was an actual genuine threat. Today, we'll be talking about the demon, Baal. Baal is without a doubt one of the best villains from the franchise, and I've been wanting to make a video on him for a while. I wanted to break down why so many other villains from the franchise fall flat on their face while this one makes such a big impact, and how his biggest weakness eventually led to his pathetic downfall. Now, I want to briefly bring up that unlike many other characters from the Evil Dead franchise, this one is based on an actual demonic entity from the Hebrew, Christian, and Catholic Bible. A lot of character traits are reinterpreted or straight up taken from the Bible, so I'll be talking about those when they come up. I'm actually a practicing Catholic, so I was hesitant to make this video, but it is a fictionalized character that's whole point in the story is to be defeated and disliked. On top of that, you all really wanted me to dissect him and his downfall, so I'm gonna make an exception for this video. Now to start, let's talk about his introductory episode. His introduction in the series is rather unorthodox. After Ash fights the Deadite in the bathroom near the end of the 3rd episode of season 2, episode 5 features a female cop walking into the bathroom to investigate. This is where she encounters Bill, and something interesting happens. She's allured by him with a simple shush, and just like that, it's lights out. Bill has skinned her and taken the skin as a suit to wear. This introduction immediately makes the audience dislike him. He literally just got here and already killed an innocent woman. In writing, the best way to make the audience hate someone is to make them do cruel things right from the beginning. And skinning someone alive is probably one of the cruelest things someone can do. The skin suits that he uses is his main way to deceptively sneak around so he himself won't have to get involved directly in a fight. He is literally wearing a face of a friend so he can get what he wants. To quote Corinthians, Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. This already sets up his character to be extremely close to actual demons. But of course, these are used in more interesting ways than just camouflage. A while later, he slips into the police station with Ash and the group using his disguise and sets loose the now skinless meat puppet as a distraction. Now, the smart play he makes here is dropping the skin suit so now both the ghost beaters and everyone else at the station know that there's an evil force out for them. This draws everyone's attention away from him and focuses it on villainizing Ash, which in turn lets him pull Ruby away from the group by disguising himself as another female cop. See, this is kind of genius, because by dropping the skin suit, everyone assumes that he is now somewhere in the building as himself, not even considering the idea that he could be wearing another skin suit. He's barely had 5 minutes of screen time, yet everyone in proximity to him is already twisted around his fingers, turning on Ash due to their desperation and fright. And while his meat puppet did fail to kill Ash, this was never meant to be a winning plan. Killing Ash was never his goal. See, what he's doing here is testing the fighting capabilities of Ash and his group while also figuring out what makes the people of Elk Grove tick. His fear-mongering of everyone in the police station is just him testing the waters before he figures out how to control the entire town. From this point on, he has all of the information he needs to twist everyone else around his fingers. He starts with Thomas Emery by tempting his need of control and respect, both of which are now in danger because of Ash's return. You see, Emery feels threatened by Ash because of his past tormenting and bullying in high school, and now he's finally in a position of power as a police chief. Good old Billy can easily see this and tempts Emery with false promises. He exploits this fear and tempts him into using his new power to torment and attempt to kill an innocent man. Because of this manipulation, he has now turned the most respected person in this town to evil. He didn't even have to turn him into a Deadite. and through him, he can control the entire town of Elk Grove. Alright, now let's hit the pause button and talk about this for a second. What is this telling us about his character? Well, from the very first clip, this is pretty blatantly displaying how he exploits people's insecurities or fears to get exactly what he wants. He didn't know anybody else in the police station except Ruby, so what did he do? He snuck his way inside and threw everyone into a panic, allowing him to separate Ruby from the group and continue to exploit what he knew would make her weak. All while watching everyone else through the meat puppet and learning their flaws that can be used at a later time. Once he had enough information, he moved on to his next victim and exploited what made him weak. Because he took the time to observe and collect information, he was able to control the entirety of the town through Emery. This already sets up Baal as a very different antagonist. Not only is he not going through with the basic Deadite method of attack the guy or screw with the guy, but he's actually setting up things that can help him at a later date. He's learning the insecurities and flaws of his enemies to then use against them when he needs them, but he's never blatant and he almost never acts if it doesn't aid his own self-interest. He offers deals and promises like he's a friend, like he can give them what they want if they just do what he says, which is a trick that ties back to the Bible and how both Satan and demons will attempt to treat you like a friend until they get what they want. After that, you'll be cast aside and forced to suffer. It's just one of the many ways that he ties back to actual demons that represent true evil. But that's just in his first episode. Let's move on to his next. After Ash and company flee to his old home, Bill then calls upon two forces to try and pinch Ash out. One being the angry mob he cultivated while he hides in a new flesh suit, and the other being a reanimated Deadite version of Ash's sister Cheryl. I think using Cheryl was purposefully done to make Ash both confused and unwilling to fight. This is the first time a Deadite has ever come back after dying previously, and the way she's presented as being almost resurrected normally before flying into a violent Deadite is pretty obviously trying to screw with Ash's feelings. But the difference between this Deadite attack and many others is that it's coordinated. He didn't just send Cheryl in to try and kill Ash, this is meant to slowly push him outside. We can see throughout their fight how Cheryl is slowly but surely inching Ash towards the door. Eventually, Billy gets what he wants and Ash is outside exactly where he wants him. Once Ash is finally outside, Emery is able to drug him in the confusion, leading to Ash meeting his new foe for the first time. I like to think that he wasn't trying to kill Ash with this plan either. Rather, he wanted him to prove his innocence to the crowd on full display on purpose. But to explain why, we need to jump into the next episode, Delusion. The entirety of this episode is taken up by Bill disguising himself as a psychiatrist of a mental institution, trying to convince Ash that this whole time he's been locked up after he allegedly went crazy in 1982 and killed his friends with a chainsaw. He even tries to convince him that this entire time he's been making up stories about his heroic adventures like a lunatic, trying to paint himself as a hero. He pulls out all the stops here by trying to convince him that Kelly was really a psychopath and that Pablo was simply one of his confinement guards. He even convinces Linda B to persuade Ash that he really did go crazy all those years ago. So, to go back to his reasoning and overall plan back at the house, Baal bringing back Cheryl and having Ash prove himself to the whole town was done on purpose to bring Ash down from what should have been a great accomplishment. He finally proved himself to his town. He's finally no longer Ashy Slashy, and almost immediately it was taken away from him. Now in his mind, it was all a made-up hoax from a crazy man trying to convince himself that he's not a bad person. Bill doesn't just want to kill him. He wants to psychologically break apart Ash to make him think that everything that's ever happened to him was not the result of Deadites, but because he genuinely went crazy. Bringing back Cheryl was a setup so he could make Ash think that he really is a monster, that he keeps painting himself as a hero when in reality he keeps committing heinous acts. What's so great about the mental hospital episode is how it exposes and exploits Ash's inner voice and worries that he really is crazy, that this entire time he's been the bad guy. It's poetic that this comes right after he proved to his town that he wasn't a monster, because Bill is directly trying to uproot that, to break his psyche even more. All while again, he's disguised as a psychiatrist under the guise of trying to help him, when in reality, he's just trying to manipulate and control him. This is what Baal truly wants more than anything. Not just for evil to win, not just to get the book for himself, but to have control over everything. He wants to manipulate everyone around him to control them. He wanted to control Ruby while they were married. He controlled the meat puppet itself at the police station, uses it to control everyone else through fear-mongering, and he controls Emery by offering him false promises and in turn leads to controlling the town itself as an angry mob. If this was all he was, he would be almost entirely unstoppable. Except he too is just as flawed as the people he's exploiting. And from this point on, it's fairly obvious what it is. His pride. He has such pride in himself and his ability to manipulate and twist people the way he wants, and that's his biggest weakness. He didn't need to boast about how he's going to defeat Ash to Ruby. He could have easily just hid in the shadows and not be involved at all, but he just needed to be prideful. He also didn't need to try and break Ash's psyche to turn him to his side. All he needed was Pablo since he was the book at this point. He could have easily used Ash's bait, lured the group in so he could easily snatch Pablo and killed everyone, but in his pride, he just had to have the hero as his lapdog. This comes back to bite him when Ash reveals that he wasn't being manipulated at all. He was manipulating Baal into being in the same room as Pablo so they could send him back to where he came from. He didn't take into account the relationships that Ash has formed over this time. He's become stronger as a person because of them, and Billy just couldn't see that because he was so focused on his own prideful accomplishment of controlling the Chosen One. His pride, his cardinal sin cost him what could have been his ultimate win, and in turn, he was now the one being manipulated. Ironic. But in sending him back, Pablo dies as a result. Ash is of course completely broken over this, until it's revealed at a drug trip through Pablo's dead body that if he goes back in time, he can get the original version of the book and undo everything that would be, which would also bring Pablo back to life. The time travel of Evil Dead is not a mess I want to get into right now. Leave a comment if you want to see a video where I attempt to untangle that writing mess. We're just gonna skip through all of that so that we can get to the important part. Seemingly, it looks like the time travel in book collection worked, but something feels off. Shouldn't there be more conflict? Why is it Pablo is just okay now? Well, that's all explained as Baal reveals himself. Okay, let's go back a couple episodes real quick. While nearing his supposed failure, Bill concocts one last plan by bisecting Pablo to kill him, while hiding himself in Pablo's body. He figured out that he can't control Ash through his past actions or his own self-doubts, but what he can control is his savior complex. His need to try and save the people closest to him and keep them safe. I covered that a bit in my Ash Williams video, which you could watch in the playlist below. Bill manipulating Ash to go back to 1982 and retrieve that version of the book was an insane twist because the audience didn't even see it coming alongside the characters. It was the first and only time his plan wasn't directly conveyed to the audience or implied in subtext, and it works perfectly. The skin suit was perfectly set up, his manipulation of Ash's need to save his friends was perfectly foreshadowed, and on top of that, we as the audience are already trained to believe that crazy things happen during Ash's drug trips, so even we are surprised. I consider this to possibly be the best twist of the entire show. Kudos to the writers. But before we head into the final part of the video and discuss his main weakness and downfall, I want to highlight his design real quick, which plays into more of his character. Baal in Season 2 was portrayed by Joel Tobeck, who does a phenomenal job in this role. In analyzing his design, he's portrayed wearing an all-black outfit, with an obsidian wedding ring on his finger and long black hair. On the surface, if you see this guy walking down the street, he might look a little dark, but nothing noticeably demonic on the surface. He just looks like someone with an affliction for black. That is, until you look at his finger, which usually sports a thick black nail. Not only is this his main weapon, but it's also a look into who he really is. A wolf in sheep's clothing, someone who will tell you they're your friend and then stab you in the back, which ties back into how he used those same abilities to allure and draw the guard in his introduction. Even from his initial looks, he's trying to manipulate you into thinking he's not such a bad guy, when in reality his off looks match the monster beneath, which is literally what Satan himself tries to do. It's even more telling when you look at his face. Despite all the calmness and coolness, Joel portrays him with such a sadistic and evil look in his eye, like he's just mapping out all the ways to bend you to his will. I also want to take this moment to highlight Bill's quote-unquote family. It's told to the audience in the TV show that he and Ruby were once married before she ran away, freeing herself from him. However, in 1982, Ruby was still very much married to him. This also makes these weird gray goop monsters his children. It's like a dystopian type of family unit. In the Bible, it said that he's supposed to be a demon of impurity, and his principal function is to make cultures come to impurity through fornication. This concept is explored here by having his children be impure, dark, gray, and completely evil looking. He might call these his kids, but in reality, all they really are to him are drones, creatures that are young and easy to control, which leads back to that being all he really wants: control over everyone around him, even his so-called family and wife. He now at this point has the book and his so-called family, so essentially, he's won. He successfully puppeteered Ash and everyone else around him to get exactly what he wants, and if he just killed him right here, he would have definitely let evil reign over the world. He would have won. But again, his biggest flaw comes back to bite him, because despite holding all the cards, he can't help but try and be superior in every way to Ash. Despite literally gaining nothing but more pride in himself, Baal just has to take Ash's offer and fight him in a no-powers fistfight. His pride literally can't allow him to take the easy win. But Ash has fought his whole life in hand-to-hand combat, and Bill has always fought safely from behind closed doors, so of course he gets absolutely laid out in a one-on-one fight. Eventually he gets so fed up that he cheats, attempting to shift the situation, coming back to his constant need of control. But every time he tries fighting on Ash's level, he's bested again and again, resulting in him cheating over and over to save himself. He again is on the verge of winning. He has Ash in his hand. All he has to do is stab him and he'd win. He's closer than literally any villain of the series has ever been. But all Ash has to ask...
What was she like in the sack?
His ultimate undoing was his very own pride. He had so many opportunities to win and be done with it. He had Ash in the palm of his hand 3 times, and he still had to try and prove himself superior. Bill would be the perfect puppet master if he didn't have this pride in himself and his abilities. But no, he has to try and twist Ash's mind to his side. He has to prove that he can beat him without any powers, and he has to smirk and revel in his conquest of Ruby. And each time he does this, he loses unless he cheats or pulls a dirty move. But by the 3rd time, he's out. He runs out of backup plans, and Ash is the one that ironically manipulated him in the end. While he may not have permanently died and was only sent back to where he came from, he doesn't show up at all in Season 3. Heck, he's not even mentioned. So theoretically, they could end up bringing him back in a future project, but right now the character is pretty much in limbo. I think, in my opinion, that Bill is not only the best villain of the entire series, but also one of the most interesting to analyze. I've seen a few takes online that believe he's just stupid, as most of his plans don't make sense and barely any result in him winning. But in truth, the only plan to properly fail is his mental hospital plan. Every single other one ends up succeeding in setting up things for the future. What I think makes him such a good villain, however, isn't just his power to plan ahead and manipulate the people around him by using their inherent flaws, it's that he himself is just as flawed. And those same flaws result in his downfall every single time. One of the 7 deadly sins is, of course, pride. Pride is meant to alienate from God. The theological definition of pride is literally defined as, quote, an excessive love for one's own excellence, which perfectly describes B to a T. I actually have a theory when the time comes to analyze Ruby that she's meant to represent another deadly sin. In fact, I have a sneaky suspicion that if the series got more seasons, eventually every deadly sin would be represented by a new demon Ash has to take on. Because Billy Bob can't help himself when he has an opportunity to flex on everyone around him. That is why he fails. That is what holds him back and causes him to become a flawed puppet master. But what makes him even more interesting is how Ash is essentially his foil. Bill thinks ahead and forms strategies to get his way. Ash runs headfirst into everything with his motto, shoot first, think never. Bill is very charismatic, alluring, and looks well put together when inside he's twisted. Ash at times is messy, dresses plain, and despite being very brash, is genuinely a good person. And while Billy is very prideful in his abilities, Ash Ash is not. We all know that he's a loudmouth and talks a big game, but remember that most of this is a bluff, and in reality, he actually considers himself a normal person despite all the amazing things he's done, making him, ironically, incredibly humble. This is why his mind games are ineffective on Ash most of the time, because he's basically his exact opposite. Bill chooses to twist people around his fingers with false promises, while Ash is nothing but genuine with the people around him. What you see with Ash is what you get. This is who he is. The reason why his time travel plan worked was because Ash was in a moment of genuine pain for his friend, genuine desperation. By preying on Ash's turmoil, that eventually sealed Bill's fate. Because during their fight, Ash is able to react to his deception and realize that by preying on his biggest weakness, his pride, he can get an advantage. Like how Bill got his advantage on Ash and everyone else he's manipulated. I can only imagine how angry and appalled Bill was that he was bested by a normal human being, someone who opposed his values in every single way. Thus ends the story of Bill. Wait, have I been calling him Bill the whole time? Ah, dang it. Well, I'm sure it's fine. It's already been recorded. Who cares? Thank you all so much for watching this video. Bill has been one of the most highly requested characters for me to talk about for a while, and I'm glad I could finally analyze him. I'm going to take a short break from Evil Dead characters to explore some other characters from different franchises. The next video I plan to do is on William Afton from Five Nights at Freddy's, so please subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of when that video goes live. Drop a like and comment down below some characters you'd like to see videos on in the future, and I can try to make that happen. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all later. Bye bye!